On tonight's episode of the Lone Wolfer Garage, we're going to install progressive fork springs. So you've got a set of progressive fork springs. What do you do next? Well, normally your first thought is to either check out your trusty handy dandy manual, look for the oil levels that you need to have. Not only does it give it in the amount of fluid that needs to be in there, but it also gives you a measurement of the oil level from the top of the actual fork leg to where the fluid sits, the top of the fluid. So the top of the fluid to the top of the fork leg, that empty space, that's what these numbers are for. Or you can go onto Google and you can find a forum and you can be told about 1,000 times that you need to get a fucking manual because nobody ever wants to share the information because they're douchebags. If you need that information because you're just changing out the fluid, here it is. This one is for 2004 to 2013. If you need a picture from this particular manual of any page, I will happily get that to you. Or if you need an entire sequence of pages, I'll take pictures and I'll send them to you. But these measurements for the OEM fork springs are going to be wrong. In the progressive box, you'll find instructions. Read them. They are actually quite detailed and very useful for installing progressive fork springs. On page 2, we're going to find a diagram that's actually going to show you how much fluid you need to put in your forks. They have a very specific amount of room they need at the top of the fork, above the fluid. Progressive fork springs are bigger and beefier than OEM springs and are going to displace more fluid. So that means when you put them in, the fluid level is going to rise. Page 3, you're going to find information on how long the spacer needs to be. XL1200N, 3 inches. Pretty much all the models are here. If you have any questions, call Progressive. All right, to get this job done, we need parts and we need tools. First, we need our progressive fork springs and fork oil, and then we need our scissor jack or something to get the front end of the bike off of the ground. We have to elongate those forks so that we can get the caps off easily, and then we gotta break them down all the way. To get the caps off, I got my 1/2-inch ratchet here. I've got a 1/2-inch extension tool attached to a Motion Pro fork cap remover. I like this one because it's got rounded corners and a rubber gasket in there to save your chrome caps. I have a telescopic magnet to actually get the old fork springs out. Flashlight comes in handy. I have a Phillips head screwdriver to get the fork drain plugs out. I have a set of pliers just because they're handy. A bucket and rag to actually catch the old fork oil. And I've got this here Motion Pro fork oil level gauge. So the Motion Pro fork oil level gauge and other tools like this are super handy because you can not only measure the amount of space at the top of the fork tube, but you can remove excess fluid at the same time. If you were to do this with just a ruler or some other measuring device, you'd actually have to find a way to remove the excess oil if you have too much in there. Turkey baster comes to mind, but this one lets you do it at the exact same time. You can measure in millimeters along the tube and mark it off with this guy here. And then the plunger lets you suck it out or put more back in if you need to. And as stated in the instructions, you need to cut down the spacers. And you're going to need something to cut with. So we need to take the fork caps off of the forks. And for that, we need a 1 3/8 bit. This one is made by Motion Pro, and it is specific for taking off the fork caps. It's got these nice little rounded corners so that you won't strip anything. It's got this little piece of rubber so that if your caps are chrome like mine, it doesn't sit directly on there. But if you only have a wrench or a socket, that'll work. And this is a 1/2-inch drive. So remember, the springs inside are going to be putting pressure on the cap. So you're going to have to be careful taking these out. You want to have constant downward pressure while doing this. And I've actually wrapped a t-shirt around my handlebars because I don't need to remove my handlebars to remove these caps. I've got enough clearance to actually do that. Jesus, this thing on there. This particular model, the 2009 XL1200N, does have these metal spacers in there. You have to take those guys out. You're going to have some oil on it, so you're going to want to put it into a plastic bag or bucket. And then you're going to need something to get the washer that actually sits between that spacer and the spring out, and the spring. I'm going to use a magnet. If you have a long hook, you can use a long hook. Let's get it out. You're going to want to pull this out slowly because it is covered in oil. And you're going to want to take note that the more heavily wound part is at the bottom. Time to do the other side. Oh, it smells terrible in there. All right, now we got to get the old fluid out of the fork. And the awesome thing about these Harleys is that there's a drain plug on these guys. It's a Phillips head. It should come off pretty easily. You don't want to strip it accidentally because I believe it is quite soft. And I do believe there is a brass washer on there, which you don't want to lose. And I do have something covering my rotor because I don't want oil all over that. I'm not worrying about measuring how much is coming out. All right, repeat that step on the other side, taking care not to strip this one, as I kind of did, and I'm going to have to replace it. And just let those guys drain. Gravity will do the rest of the work for you. Just look at how much more substantial the progressive spring on the right is compared to the OEM spring in the Sportster front end. That's a lot more spring. So once each fork is empty of all the fluid that you can get out of it, clean it up and plug them up. And it just needs to be snug. You don't need to torque these guys down. When filling the forks, they actually need to be compressed all the way down with no spring inside. Again, compressed all the way down with no spring inside. To make sure I have the correct amount of fluid in each fork, I'm going to use this here Motion Pro Fork Oil Level Gauge. There are a couple different versions of this. Stockton Tools makes one. Progressive Suspension makes their own. Though both of those are a bit more expensive than these Motion Pros. I think this was $16 on Amazon. So the way this guy works is that it measures the amount of space from the top of the fork down into the tube that is empty space. The oil level is only supposed to come up to a certain point inside of the fork. I can suck out any excess by using the plunger here, and this is secured in place, giving me the exact amount of space that needs to be in the top of the tube. So we suck out fluid until it starts sucking air, just like that. And then we know our level is pretty spot on. And now the other side. And there we are. The fork legs are filled. And now it's time to load the progressive fork springs into the fork tube. And as you can see, they stick up past the top of the fork tube. So that means that we're going to have to raise the bike up and get these guys to drop down in by elongating the fork tube. Kerplunk. Blink. Bink. It does take a serious amount of downward pressure to get these fork caps back on. So first I'm going to address the elephant in the room. My beard's a lot shorter right now. I'm wearing a mask at work as per state orders, and it gets really annoying having a longer beard. So I figured I'd clean it up, make a loser wear the mask. Took the bike out, had a nice long ride, practiced some exceptional social distancing, and progressive fork springs, 100% awesome. Honestly, if you have a Sportster, upgrade. It was about a $400 investment to do the front and the rear now. It was so worth it. It's ridiculous. Such a better ride. Progressive fork springs. Totally worth it.